Hello everyone, and welcome back to World of Warships Blitz with Terry. I had finally some time over the weekend to take a look at the Tier 7 European destroyer, which is in the preview. I think it's in a crate at the moment. So now we're getting serious, and we're actually seeing the upper tiers. This is the Skåne, I think, is how you would pronounce this. A Swedish destroyer at Tier 7. Now, I did have a look, and I have to admit I knew absolutely nothing about the Swedish Navy during the Second World War. And it turned out the Swedish actually had a sizable amount of navy. It wasn't like a massive seagoing navy, because the Swedish were not interested in controlling any kind of empires or anything. But it was mostly focused around coastal defense. So they had some cruiser, like armored cruiser things, and a whole bunch of destroyers, torpedo boats, frigates, and all kinds of stuff. So some of these ships actually existed, which cannot be said for the Skåne, because, that thing didn't. And it really surprised me, because the details here say that this was a Öland-class prototype, which, why didn't they just use the Visby? Because that actually existed and predates the Ölands and isn't in the game. But well, yeah. So Swedish Navy was very much focused around coastal defense, because the Swedish were neutral throughout the war, which means they weren't taking either side. And if you want to be neutral, you better, well, during wartime, you better have some ways of ensuring that nobody gets any funny ideas when it comes to your country, especially if you have things like raw materials, like, I don't know, iron ore and things like that. I mean, probably the IKEA furniture alone. But yeah, that probably wasn't a thing during the Second World War. But so yes, the Swedish did remain neutral, and their ships didn't really actually see action. But the Ölands were actually active, and the Visbys before them were active until the late 70s, early 80s or so, after some refits. So these things have stuck around for quite a bit. Now the Skåne. What's special about the Swedish destroyers? Well, just in line with the other pan-European destroyers, the torpedoes are a bit different, but we'll get to that in a minute. Let's actually look at the ship skills, because that's where like at around Tier 7, Tier 8, we're starting to see the final setup most of the time. So we do get engine accelerators, we do get a radar, and we get 2 air defense alert, and it's an air defense alert 2, so it doubles up our AA defense. At Tier 6, we didn't actually have any AA defense, which I wasn't super happy about, but now we're starting to see that. The other thing that's special about them is that they get the additional repair kit, just like the British heavy cruiser line. Now, it's a destroyer, so it doesn't have a huge amount of health to begin with. So you really want to use your repairs early and as often as you can, to get the maximum benefit out of this. Because these things, or at least the Skåne, is very fragile. I think she has the lowest hit point pool, or among, I think the Akatsuki has similar, but one of the lowest hit point pools in Tier 7 for destroyers, and absolutely no armor whatsoever. So this is a very, very squishy destroyer. She is slow, and I mean slow. She's got a speed of 34 knots. She'll have trouble outrunning some cruisers at this point. I mean, yeah, the maneuverability is okay-ish. It's nothing special. The main guns are interesting because, well, this is a Swedish machine, so we get Bofors guns. These are 120 millimeter, somewhat autoloader-ish. At least they do have a reasonably fast rate of fire, but we only get 4 of them. So you've got one turret in the front and one turret in the rear. So even with a 3.5 second reload, it's at best average in terms of gun power. So this is not a gunboat. This is not a destroyer, a brawly gunboat destroyer at all. In fact, I would, at least on the Skåne, and I haven't tried the Öland yet, but at least on this ship, I would thoroughly recommend not getting into engagement with other destroyers. into gunfights with other destroyers at least. Now these guns do have one use, and that is to set fires. Because just like the Tier 6, we are relying on our torpedoes to do the damage. In fact, we are relying on the flooding caused by our torpedoes to do the majority of the damage. Because by themselves, first of all, we only get 6 torpedoes. Now they do have a very quick reload of 37 seconds, but they do very little damage. They do about as much damage as airdrop torpedoes. They have a very good range of 9 kilometers, and they are extremely fast with 86 knots. They're almost twice as fast as some of the slowest torpedo sets that we have in game. And they have a 33% chance of flooding. So effectively, pretty much with every torpedo spread, you're almost guaranteed, well, you're not, but you have a better than 50-50 chance to actually cause a flood. The AA is finally starting to pick up. And that is somewhat historically accurate because these ships actually, I mean, the Skåne didn't exist, but the Öland did. And these ships did have a reasonably good set of anti-aircraft firepower. The large caliber AA has a pretty long range with 3.8 kilometers. Small caliber not so much, is very short ranged here. And she's reasonably sneaky with 5.4 kilometers. So let's have a look how we got to these values. Now, there are probably 2 builds that you could do with these ships. You could go for a gunboat build and go with speed and the elite gun operator and probably the main battery mod 2 for faster reload. And I think you can get the reload down to just over 3 seconds. Still not feeling it because this ship just doesn't have the survivability to get into a gunfight with other destroyers and get out. She doesn't have a smoke. She is very slow by default. The other build is an AA build, which has its own set of downsides because, well, you're still not an AA monster, and you're not always getting into carrier games. So in games which don't have carriers, well, you don't get any benefit from this. But given how, well, squishy the Skåne is, I'm more going for if I see destroyers, I run away sort of playstyle. And ended up going with the AA specialization just for the novelty of it. So I have the large caliber and small caliber AA actually slightly boosted, which also goes into the modules, because you don't get a wide range of options in the first slot, which means I actually went for AA range, which is what got us these things. Now, I really think you need the propulsion mod in a destroyer, because if you need to dodge anything, and you really have to in this thing because 2 or 3 torpedoes from anything can take you out one shot blank. You couldn't use, and the small caliber AA isn't great anyway. So propulsion mod definitely is the right choice. Now the third slot you could boost again the AA range, or you could go for speed if you want a more keep the guns firing sort of build. I went with concealment, because I like using this destroyer early on in spotting, and I like to be able to get away. And lastly, the main way you're doing damage with this destroyer is using floods. So we're in tier 7. If we're top tier and we get some people who haven't learned yet how to dodge torpedoes, that's all fine and dandy. But if we're getting into a tier 8 game, and while the torpedoes are quick, people occasionally do know how to dodge them. You are going to need to get as close as you possibly humanly can without being spotted to get these 86 knot fish in the water. And that's why I'm running concealment. Also, it allows me to, well, hopefully try and disengage from other destroyers, because that's not something she's particularly good at. I have put a commander in here, just on tier 7. I have the battlefield support, which for tier 7 is kind of still a good idea. If you do get in a carrier game, it's good to have an additional AA. I think the Öland gets 3 by default, so you'd end up with 4, which is still doable. So it's a choice you could make, but it probably is also all right just to go with the torpedo alert. Definitely you want preheating, you definitely want the AA defense expert, because that. I have Daredevil in because I do tend to get shot at quite a bit. You could use Survivalist because you do get 4 repair kits, but it's a destroyer. It doesn't have a huge amount of heal to begin with, so that's the thing. Exploit weakness is good because, you're probably going to be always firing on things that are either on fire or flooding. Fully prepared because nothing else makes sense here. And this, you probably want the adrenaline rush, to be fair, because again, nothing else really makes that much sense. Then definitely the engine overload. And from there on, there isn't all that much really. That's interesting. Probably the IFHE or maybe APCS. So far, at least on the Skåne, the 120 mils are not extremely punchy. I'm actually sticking to high explosive against destroyers because I do get mostly semi-pens against more heavily armored destroyers like Germans or Americans or Soviets with the armor piercing, even at relatively close ranges. So most of the time I'm sticking to high explosive against destroyers. This might be a way to alleviate that. Not sure, no idea. And you probably just want Giant Hunter again. You're not actually doing the damage with the torpedoes, but what else are you going to pick, right? So interesting. I don't think there's a huge amount of additional value of the higher tier captains. The one thing that you definitely positively absolutely want is the defensive AA skill and maybe the engine overload for the better engine boost, because you do rely on your engine boosts quite a bit to get in and out of trouble, because the base speed is very, very, very slow. The historical camo actually looks really awesome. I mean, look at this. This is pretty. This is like, I'm not sure if this is a later camo or if this just that's what the Swedish ships used to look like because of coastal defense operations. But I find this very pretty. It gives us torpedo range. It gives us torpedo speed as if we needed that. So it's an all-in-all good addition to things. But for today, as usual, we're just going to use the Seaborne Assault because that gives us a bit better service detection. And that's just what we're going to be sailing with. So, yeah, how do we play these ships? So far, I found that aggressive playstyles don't work in this ship because enemy destroyer will just cut through you. Absolutely. Even Japanese destroyers can just take you out with reasonable ease. Your torpedoes are quick, but you're starting to get into tiers where you can't hit enemy destroyers with torpedoes easily anymore. Like, if you get into a tier 8 game and you're up against people that actually are destroyer mains and know how to play these things, there's no way you're going to hit them with torpedoes unless you get at point blank range. And you don't have the alpha strike, right? Because again, if you look at the torpedoes, they do 1,800 points of damage, and you've got like 4.5% damage reduction on that. You only have 6 of them. So even if you were to rush an enemy destroyer, as long as it's full health, and by some miracle you managed to dodge their torpedoes in return, there's not much of a chance that you're actually going to be able to take them out, even if you hit with all your torpedoes. So I use torpedoes against destroyers more as deterrent, and just kind of try to scare them away. And then I'm just legging it. Because I find that, at least in this ship, surviving a gunfight with an enemy destroyer, if they are not absolutely inexperienced, is difficult. So what do you do instead? Well, I do 2 things. I'm reasonably sneaky, so I'm trying to go for cap control, and I'm trying to go for AA cover for friendly destroyers if I can. If that's the thing, right? If you're in carrier battle, just escort them as play together. And then in terms of damage, your main targets are battleships. You're not going to hit destroyers with torpedoes very much, and if you do, it doesn't do anything. You're gonna have a hard time hitting cruisers because a lot of radar hydro cruisers starting to pop up around these tiers. You're going to meet Brooklyns, you're going to meet Clevelands, and all kinds of unpleasant things. It is reasonably difficult to hit cruisers without getting too close. And again, the problem is your alpha strike isn't strong enough to actually sink anything. You cannot rush things in these kind of ships. You cannot get close, blap them in the side and sink them. But you'll find that all you've achieved is cause a flood, and you're now faced with an extremely angry cruiser on half health at point blank range, which means you're dead. Very, very much so. So this is not a aggressive, rushy sort of kind of ship. It's a damage over time ship. You want to sail around. You want to find your positions where you can drop torpedoes and these kind of things. Anyway, enough talk. Let me show you a battle where this actually went reasonably well. We are in big race and we are top tier. It's a domination map. We've got a Blackcraft Zeppelin on the enemy team. So there's some AA duty we might be able to do. We've got double Colorado, Prinz Eitel Friedrich, and 3 destroyers. Especially the Mayhem is something that we're going to be having to watch out for. So, domination, yeah, that's a really good one. Epicenter, I found I'm having trouble because I just can't hold the center. I can grab the center, but then I'm usually getting out of there because I don't have a smoke. I don't have any kind of... I do have a radar, which is very useful, but I can't get into a close range fight with enemy destroyers. So, big race. Where are we going? Let's go A. So, we'll boost them up. Because it is a concealment build, I am reasonably confident that I'm able to outspot pretty much anything unless I'm spotted by the carrier first. And if I'm spotted by the carrier first... unlike in other destroyers, you actually have a reasonable chance of somewhat defending yourself. I mean, it's still not a grand amount, right? You're not a Brooklyn, but you're not that far from it either. So you can do a reasonable amount of damage to enemy aircraft. So 3 destroyers. One of them is going to come around between these 2 islands. I can almost guarantee it. I'm going to hang left, actually, and see if I can go for B Cup, because no one's going B yet. And the carrier is on is RTBing. So let's see if there's anything in A. No, so far. Oh, hello. Hello, Mr. Mayhem. Okay, let's see where he's going. Now, he's seen me, obviously, because I'm too close. So I'll put her in reverse and let's drop some torpedoes. Now, I do have a cruiser with me, and there's Fubuki as well. So Mayhem smokes up, which means I can pop the radar and keep him spotted for the cruiser. Now, my torpedoes are not going to do anything because, again, yeah, 2 torpedo hits, but that's not going to sink the Mayhem. We did get a fire. We're just going to have to dodge the Mayhem torps, but the majority of the work here can be done by that Molotov over there, because now the Mayhem has realized that he's out of torpedoes and he's out of smoke, and while my radar is down at this point, yeah, I can just gun him down. All right, there's that one. That's one dangerous destroyer out. Now I do need to get myself back unspotted, and no one's capped B, so I'm going to head over there. There's the Prinz Eitel, and there's one of the Colorados. So let's get ourselves into B Cup and just rush to get out of detection range. Let's see if we can get a drop onto the Colorado, because the Prinz Eitel Friedrich is sailing away, but the Colorado is just sailing at the edge of my torpedo range. So let's get a little bit closer. And yeah, with the engine boost up, she's actually reasonably quick. But without, she is pretty slow. So I'm going to drop 1 first. Oh, I've got myself spotted because of planes again, obviously. Now I might as well open up then. I'm dropping 1 first because you really want to not drop both at the same time, because then the flood gets controlled. You want to drop them with around about a 10-second delay in between of them. Okay, there goes the flood. And is he damage conning it? It doesn't look like he is. Okay, the other Colorado is starting to take me under fire, but that looks like a permaflood. Okay, so I was not expecting that. And there comes some aircraft. Okay, carrier going for me. How much are we going to do about this? Oh, Icarus as well. So there goes 1 aircraft. You're not going to shoot down whole squadrons with this thing, but drop some torpedoes at the Icarus. And then my first launcher is already reloaded, so we're going to drop another spread at the general direction of those Colorados over there and see if we can cause another flood. Even if it's just an Icarus, and there you see the Icarus is easily just dodge those torpedoes. Even if it's just an Icarus, I don't necessarily want to get into a gunfight with it. I might be able to win it, but there's a carrier in play as well. So again, we are shooting down some aircraft, and there's another flood. Let's look at the damage count. Oh, it looks like it's ticking. Yeah, that's still ticking. So, well, nice that. Looks like the carrier is after that battleship to my left, and there's the Icarus. Now, let's see if we can drop something on the Icarus and try to help that battleship out here. Now, I'm doing what I can in terms of AA defense, but again, I am not doing a massive amount. All right, Icarus, is he slowing down? This is mid-tier, so I've seen a lot of people not understanding fuel smokes, but I think he doesn't actually slow down. So these torps are probably going to miss. Yeah, he didn't slow down. Okay. You never know, right, in mid-tiers. But that's a Nelson, so yeah, that hurt. And I should, even with my very slow speed, I should be able to outrun those torps. And if he had dropped a single spread at the Nelson, he might have caught him. But he didn't, and the Nelson has high explosive, and he's dead. All right, that's that thing taken care of. So now it's just a matter of actually we got 4 enemy ships taken out. We've dealt with 2 of the destroyers, and I mean not us, but with some assistance, and we've done a reasonable amount of flooding damage to the Colorados over there. Nelson comes under air attack. I just want to grab the cap, then I'll be heading over again and trying to help out. And then this is just out of matter of principle, because we're so far ahead in terms of damage that and or ship sunk that we really don't need that. But just trying to shoot down some more aircraft. Like I said, it's probably, if you come under concentrated air attack for the whole of the length of the battle, you're going to be starting to do some damage to airplanes, but otherwise you're probably more going to be, just a couple of them. It's an assist, and it gives you a bit of confidence that you can. You don't have to run from carrier planes like in any other destroyers. But she's not a Friesland, so that Graf Zeppelin there is perma flooding by the looks of it. So. Or maybe he just doesn't bother because they've clearly lost the game. So yeah, you can use the guns to set some fires. Okay, Graf Zeppelin's dead. And do we get another airplane for our efforts here? I don't know. But yeah, there's not much left in this battle. So let's just wrap it up. Well, is this an extremely... It's about expectation. Is this an extremely powerful destroyer? No. I struggle to make significant amounts of damage. You have to be exceedingly lucky, and the enemy team has to, well, assist you by sailing in straight lines, by damage controlling single fires, by taking permafloods. The only way you're really going to be dealing damage is with permafloods against battleships. And floods are percentages. So the things you're lacking is firepower, definitely. You are all but helpless against enemy destroyers. While the torpedoes are reasonably quick, if you can spot one in a smoke, then you can possibly still surprise them, but at some point they will have wised up to this. I tend not to engage enemy destroyers. The guns are firing quickly, but they're not super punchy, and you are just really too squishy. You can make use of the heals over time, so this is really more of a guerrilla hit and run sort of style destroyer. And I kind of like the idea of having a powerful AA destroyer to give air cover for early pushes and for cap controls, again, in carrier games. But don't expect to be pulling 50 to 70,000 points of damage every game. It's not that easy in these things, I find. So keep in mind, you don't have the alpha damage. You're relying on damage over time to tick up your numbers. Avoid destroyers, my opinion. You could go gunboating and kite at long range and try and set fires and rack up damage that way. That's not a bad thing if you have the liberty to do so, but be aware that these are very, very vulnerable and easy to kill destroyers. The Erland in Tier 8 actually I think looks pretty similar to this, but I'll do a separate review because I just want to see how that plays out in like a Tier 9 game or anything. And we'll see what the Tier 9s and 10s look like when they come out. But anyway, that's it for today. Thanks, everybody. And I'll see you next time. Bye.